A policeman was involved in a car chase when he was gravely injured. That injury evolved into a severe seizure, and when he got to the hospital, the doctor who treated him wasn't optimistic. They brought in the man's dog to say his last goodbye before he was declared dead, but then the dog noticed something, and what happened next is one of the best examples of loyalty between a pet and their owner. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals. Sergeant Corey Masterson was speeding with his Crown Vic, lights on and siren blaring. He had been chasing some perpetrators for a few minutes when they dodged him in the center of town. The perpetrators were making their way to the interstate, and there were fewer innocent bystanders in that area, so that leveled the playing field for the policeman. Sergeant Corey was keeping an eye on the SUV ahead of him and at Archie in the rearview mirror, his Belgian Malinois companion. The dog was sitting straight up, paying full attention to the chase. From one moment to the next, the SUV veered hard toward the left, shot ahead, and stopped at the side of the road. Then, the criminals left the car like rats and scattered into the woods that lined the interstate. Corey looked Archie in the eyes and said, "You stay here for now, boy." Then, the man jumped from the police cruiser, drew his weapon, and started chasing the perpetrators into the woods. He knew they had to be somewhere in the trees, but Corey couldn't see any sign of them. With caution, he started moving deeper into the woods. He tried to keep an eye on his surroundings, and all his senses were on high alert as he scanned the woods with his firearm raised. Then, he felt a blow on his head, and everything started moving in slow motion. As he fell to the ground, Corey knew he'd been ambushed by the criminals. He understood that he'd been hit on the back of the head with something heavy and that he was losing consciousness. The last thing Corey did before everything went black was activate the button that would open the car door and release Archie from the car. Archie moved into action as soon as the car door opened, and his heightened sense of smell told him exactly where Corey was. When he finally reached the policeman, he was lying motionless on the ground, and a man was sitting on him, holding a large knife in his hands. It seemed like he was about to stab Corey, but Archie ran faster and flew into the air to tackle the criminal. The man scrambled to his feet, and this time, he intended to hurt both Corey and Archie. Archie attacked again and bit into the man's arm right below the elbow. The criminal screamed and tried to shake Archie off of him, but the dog only tightened his grip. He had strong jaw and neck muscles. He wasn't letting go. Eventually, the man relented and went down on one knee. He tried to stab Archie with his knife, but the dog was faster. Archie let go of the man's arm while dodging the stabs, and the man used the opportunity to get on his feet and run into the woods. But before we see what happens next, like this video to help it reach 10K and subscribe to the channel. The next thing Archie did was turn around and run to Corey. He could sense that his friend was in bad shape, so he knew that the most important thing was to get him help. Behind them, Archie could hear voices. He ran in that direction, and he found that a second police vehicle had come to assist. The officers who stepped out of the car recognized Archie and followed him. When they got to Corey, he was still unconscious, and he didn't look good at all. He was rushed to the hospital, and the doctors started working on Corey. They also ordered some tests to see how things were looking. Archie went home with one of the other officers, but he was too anxious to sleep. He paced and whined the entire night. When morning came, he was eager to get to Corey. The only thing on this dog's mind was getting to his friend and making sure he was okay. Unfortunately, things weren't looking good for Corey. The doctor told the other police officers that Corey had a severe skull fracture and his brain was swollen and bleeding. He was in a coma, and only time would tell if he would recover. Because he was a dog, Archie wasn't allowed into the ICU, so he was left by the door of the emergency room. When a fellow officer came out, Archie was looking around as if asking, "Where is Corey?" But the officer shook his head and opened the door to the patrol car. Archie got in, but his tail was down as if he could sense that the news wasn't good. Months later, the doctors decided to send Corey home. He was still in a coma, but they were hoping that being in familiar surroundings might help him. Arrangements were made for care around the clock, and his fellow officers escorted his ambulance to his home. As you can imagine, Archie never left Corey's side. He was always right next to his bed, day in and day out. Eventually, Archie noticed something out of the ordinary. Something was going on with Corey, so he ran out of the room and tried to get the attention of Corey's nurse. She followed Archie to the bedroom, and her eyes started watering when she realized Corey's eyes were open and they were focused. Corey looked at Archie, and then, in a feeble voice, he said, "Hi, boy." Corey's arm was almost limp, but he tried to raise it to touch Archie. For the next few months, Corey's recovery was slow and difficult. After months of lying in bed, his muscles had atrophied, so he had to go through a ton of physiotherapy before he could walk normally again. Then, one night, something else happened. Corey tried to go to the bathroom, but Archie could tell something was strange. He looked carefully at Corey, and the man's face was contorted with pain. Archie ran to the nurse's room and barked until she came out, leading her to Corey's room. At that point, the man had fallen to the ground and he was having a severe convulsion, with foam running down his mouth. The nurse rushed to Corey and placed a pillow under his head to provide the neck some support. She rolled him to the side and checked his pulse as his convulsion passed. When Corey was stable enough, the nurse called the doctor. When the doctor arrived and examined Corey, he shook his head and started talking to the nurse in a low voice. A sadness took over the entire room, and Archie wasn't a stranger to that due to his work as a police dog, but he couldn't understand why everyone was sad now. Corey wasn't dead, so when they brought a stretcher to remove the man's body, Archie went into combat mode. He stood over Corey, growling and showing his teeth to the doctor and anyone who tried to get close to Corey. This went on for 2 hours until the doctor called the police department to get someone to pick up Archie so they could remove Corey's body. A while later, the police captain showed up, and when he saw Archie standing over Corey's limp body, he looked down. He told the doctor that removing Archie wouldn't be easy. They had been together for years, so they had a bond that no one could break. The thing is that Archie knew something they didn't. He could feel that Corey wasn't dead, and he had to find a way to make them understand that. The doctor was telling the captain that Corey had no heartbeat, he wasn't breathing, and there was nothing more they could do for him. But as he finished the sentence, Corey started coughing. Archie finally stood to the side, keeping his eyes on the doctor and the captain. As you can imagine, they were shocked. It turns out it was a rare case of the Lazarus effect. Corey seemed dead as a result of the severe epileptic seizure he had due to his head injury, but he wasn't dead. Archie had known before anyone else. Eventually, Corey made a complete recovery from his head injury. After a lot of work and doctor's appointments, he was able to get back to normal. Corey now knew for certain that Archie had his back for life and he could count on his dog for anything. What do you think about this story? Have you seen other dogs act so loyally and bravely? If so, let us know in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe for more. See you next time.